Okay, it's 2 p.m. I'm Penny Kronz. I work with DubBot. We are an automated accessibility testing tool. I like doing sessions that are very oriented towards learning and just giving more information. One of my passions is teaching people stuff that is really technical and making it in a way that is approachable. That I think is one of the fun things about accessibility is that the more you do accessibility, the more you realize that some things are just made more complicated than they need to be. And so I like looking at not just accessibility for the web, but also making learning accessible. So part of my job at DubBot is also training people on how to use our software, and we do our best to make it as approachable as possible. So I came up with the topic of ABCs of web accessibility. I think that I work a lot in higher education, and we throw around a lot of acronyms that we just expect other people to know. And I think a lot of what we do with accessibility is also throw around acronyms and kind of expect people to know what they mean. So this is it might be remedial for some people in the room if you do accessibility, but hopefully it could be a slide that you could share with people that just has high level information about what these terms mean, and also links to resources. So we have A is for accessibility. So that is making sure that people can use our website. I often equate accessibility to usability. I think a lot of what we do in accessibility, the tests that we run, the things that we suggest to people, actually make the web a better place for everyone. I was listening to a webinar by somebody recently, and they were talking about just even accessible things in the physical space that make everyone's lives easier, like curb cuts. And they mentioned on their webinar about how many people would go around a curb cut to step up on the sidewalk versus using the curb cut. And having been a mom of a baby and using a stroller for a period of time, I really got to appreciate curb cuts and that sort of accessibility. And so I'd equate that to the same thing with web, as just accessibility, in my opinion, just should be another usability test that you're running on your site. So one of the terms that we like to throw around is ally, and it's actually A11Y. And the reason we call it ally is because we take the middle letters out, and there's 11 of them, and so that is ally is accessibility abbreviated. And just don't make the mistake that it's not L's, it's ones. So that's something that could be tricky for a newcomer to accessibility. I have B is for barriers. These are the things we're trying to prevent people from encountering on our website. So a lot of accessibility is just making sure that we're not putting up restrictions for somebody to be using or accessing our content. C is for criterion or success criteria. I'm going to go ahead and hop to the next one. I wanted to go in alphabetic order, but it didn't really make sense and flow, so we're going to skip around. And later on, after looking at this, I was like, it should be the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of accessibility, and that will make sense in a little bit. But the success criteria comes from WCAG, and WCAG is for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. That is the main thing that if you are ever getting into accessibility testing that you should familiarize yourself inside and out with. And when you dig down into WCAG, the main things that you're going to be testing against are the success criteria. There are 86 currently in WCAG of success criteria, and those success criteria are divided into what we call POUR: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Perceivable is making sure that people can actually see or get the content on your website. Operable means that people can actually navigate the areas of your website. Understandable means that they can actually understand what they're navigating on your site. And robust is making sure that the site is not just usable for the current technologies available, but that you're using the standards appropriately so that it will grow with the technology changes that naturally happen over time. So those success criteria that I mentioned are divided into the sort of core groupings. One of the things I don't like about WCAG right now, to be honest, is that some people get hung up of whether something's perceivable or operable. And I think oftentimes those things are kind of interchangeable depending on your interpretation of that. So I don't like to get too into the weeds on whether it's perceivable or operable. I really just care overall if it fails a success criteria. The success criteria in WCAG are A, AA, and AAA, divided into those different categories. Most organizations that receive any sort of federal funding or state funding are required to be A or AA compliant. And WCAG has gone through many variations over time. So it at one point was WCAG 1.0, and then it turned into WCAG 2.0, and then 2.1 and 2.2. With 2.2, that was the biggest change recently for WCAG, where 9 new criteria were added to the sort of success criteria listing, and 1 was determined no longer needed, obsolete. But with the changes to 2.2, a lot more emphasis was put on making sure people who use mobile devices and people with learning disabilities are taken into consideration with the success criteria. So that brings us to Title II of the ADA. So Title II is often brought up, ADA is often brought up. ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act. It was actually passed under Bush Sr. in 1990, and Title II deals more with the web content part of Title II, and just making sure that with the ADA, it was saying that people who use services or work for the government should be able to access the same sort of technologies that someone without disabilities should be able to, can access. So then we have the DOJ ruling that has gotten a lot of conversation in our field in the last couple of years. Back in April of 2024, the DOJ ruling came out saying that yes, web content needs to be accessible if it is being provided by the federal government, and anybody who uses a vendor or like has a vendor do something for them if they are receiving federal funds, they need to make sure that that content is also accessible. So there is a deadline that a lot of people are concerned about, April 2026, of making sure that content in different resources that are provided through your website are accessible. There is some general rules around if the organization is less than 50,000 or serving less than 50,000 people. It does not have to necessarily fall under needing to be accessible, but you're supposed to still try your best. And with that, with the DOJ ruling, there's also the idea of if you archive something and don't change it after or before April 2026, it's considered archive and you don't necessarily need to go back and make it accessible. But the moment you change something on your site, if that is a part of the site, it is considered changed and therefore not archived. So it's important for people to start thinking about what like their archive system looks like on their websites, so that, you know, if you have documents, meeting minutes, and all of that stuff, that you truly archive it so that you don't have to remediate it later on. There is some other sort of understanding, like they really want, the ruling really was pushing in the way of making changes that matter. So you can prioritize what you're going to be improving on your website. And also there is the part of it that says that if something is like really onerous to make accessible, that it doesn't necessarily have to be remediated. You can provide other ways for users to get that content. So this is a big conversation piece. Everybody's always asking me when I get on a call with them, what do you know about the DOJ ruling? So that's something that if you are working in accessibility to familiarize yourself with. We also have the EU's Web Accessibility Directive, also referred to as WAD. Sometimes I get tripped up when I'm on a call and somebody's like, what do you know about WAD? So that is the Web Accessibility Directive. It turned into the European Accessibility Act. I have a link to the explanation there. I had a QR code on my slides that you would be able to access these links through. But with this, this is saying that since member countries, they want to encourage commerce across countries in the European Union, they don't want there to be a difference between one country's rules and another's. And so the member countries were supposed to adopt a standard for making things accessible that are in the public procurement process. So then we have EN 301-549. That actually has some of the, what do we call that? The Web Accessibility Directive. I have the summary of requirements here. This is very much in line with our Section 508. So with EN 301-549, let me quickly go to my notes. Canada recently adopted this in 2021 as well. And so basically this is just saying that anything that is procured through the government needs to be ensured is accessible. And so we have Section 508. That is also, this is the US sort of standard. Section 508 came under the ADA Title II Act. Sorry, and it specifically references WCAG and is around web content. So the thing with EN 301-549 is that it applies to not just web content, but it also applies to other sort of digital means, so not just website content. But with EN 301-549, if you go to the summary of requirements, it actually adopted WCAG 2.1A and AA as the standards for web content being accessible. And the same for Section 508. And I put a link there for the Trusted Tester program. That's something that's provided by Section 508 for free, and I would encourage anybody who's into accessibility to go through the program. It does take some time, but it's very informative on like how to test content with screen readers and such to ensure it's accessible. So these are two other acronyms that are thrown around a lot, ICT and EIT. So ICT is the Information and Communications Technologies, and EIT is Electronic and Information Technology. EIT is referenced in Section 508, and ICT is referenced in EN 301-549, but they're essentially the same sort of thing, just different acronyms based on where they were born out of. And then this one is a lot in my industry, VPAT, that is referenced. So this is the Volunteer Product Accessibility Template. And this is basically, you can request if you are a organization like a university and you're wanting to make sure that something you're getting from a vendor is accessible, you can request a VPAT. The VPAT is a lot for a vendor to maintain. It basically is the WCAG standards and them addressing how their product is matching the WCAG standards. So it's something that a lot of people would, I would say, go ahead and request one, but it is recommended that you verify what they've put in the VPAT is correct and accurate. So testing their tool before you actually procure it, that it is accessible and match those standards. And then this is the last one I have, the IAAP. The International Association of Accessibility Professionals. They have a lot of great resources. They have a certification program for different levels of accessibility certification. So you can get your CPAC, you can get your WAP, and I can't remember WAS. Those are different levels of accessibility certification. I have the CPAC, which is the Certified Professional Accessibility Core Competencies. And it's nice because it teaches you stuff that's not, or it requires you to learn stuff that's not just about web. So I would encourage you, if you were interested in like getting more into accessibility testing, to research the different materials they have and different certification programs. I also understand that getting certified is not something that is, that it could be a barrier to some people. So like, I don't really fully say that you have to be CPAC certified to understand accessibility and be good at accessibility testing. But I do think it is one way to like show that you have put in the legwork and that you're interested in learning more. But we encourage all of our coworkers to get certified and give them like time during the day to work on that so it's not a barrier for them. But it could be if you have other stuff. So those are the sort of key terminology and acronyms, and my voice is going. And that's our little dancing logo, DubBot, bouncing around. So I'll take questions if anyone has some. I'll leave it on the dancing. And it doesn't have to be on just the presentation, it can be on anything accessibility related. So I only had 20 minutes, so I was trying to make an interesting presentation. Yes?
Just small thing, what the VPAT, the P in VPAT, what's the full name?
Product, or I think it's product, volunteer product, product accessibility template. Mm-hmm.
And you said VPATs are more common in your industry. What is your industry?
I work in software, so we're a vendor for a lot of higher education and government agencies. Mm-hmm. So a lot of them will like request a VPAT from us. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So do I have this straight? The links projected on the slides were perceivable but not operable.
Mm-hmm. They're operable if you open the slides.
But if they're projected on the screen?
Yeah, so you'll have to open the slides. Apologies.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I got a quick question. So in the VPATs that I've worked on, like you basically can do like where it's like compliant, partially compliant, non-compliant. Have you ever run into a situation where like if somebody sends out a VPAT and there's a lot of like because I guess theoretically at least you could create a VPAT and be completely non-compliant, but you've satisfied the requirement for providing a VPAT.
Right. So that, I mean, I would recommend reading the VPAT. And if somebody has a lot of non-compliant, I would consider not using the vendor. You could see there's also a section for their roadmap on when they expect those things to be remediated. There are some things that it might be that it's part of the product that you're not planning on using, so it doesn't necessarily matter on that part, but yeah, I would make sure that they're either compliant or providing a partial compliant of like what the, sort of details are.
Could you show the first slide again with the QR code?
There we go.
Thank you.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
What's your spiciest accessibility take? Every accessibility person has like a really spicy take. So I would just like to love to hear it. The tea.
I mean, I think that things are made to sound way more technical than they need to be. And it causes people to like kind of gloss over on like even approaching it. That's I think why I'm excited about WCAG 3 and how it's written, because it's written more for like understanding the conditions that people have in the assistive technology they will be using to access your website. And so I think coming at it from that versus like this sort of more general, perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust, like what does that mean? Like, why would something not be perceivable versus like, okay, some people are going to use a keyboard to access your website. Is your website keyboard accessible, operable? Some people are going to use a screen reader. Does your website read in the correct order? So I think that is my main thing. Is like, I think WCAG 3.0 is a scary idea because it is gonna be documented differently, but I think that overall, for somebody who likes to have something more approachable and like, I think it makes more sense the way they're organizing it, and I hope it continues and makes it out of to be a full release. Anything else? Okay, we're at 2:21, so I don't want to keep you all.